Hello everyone and welcome back to the Sports with Frank podcast. Another episode today, Bundesliga focused as usual on Friday. We're going to be talking first though about the news that are coming from England and Italy. Very important updates for the calendar that's going to be shaping up from now until the end of the summer. And of course we're going to be reviewing some of the games that happened on Tuesday and Wednesday and talk about the ones that are coming up this weekend with the Bundesliga returning on Friday. So today, right away, we only had 1 day of break and we're back playing today. So for us football lovers, this calendar is shaping up to be incredible. Anyway, before we get into the podcast, please, if you listen on Apple Podcasts, rate and review me. A 5-star would be appreciated. And now, this is the Sports with Frank podcast. I'm Francesco. Let's do this. Boy, is it Christmas. Yesterday we had a great day. For anybody who's following the Premier League and the Serie A, yesterday really felt like Christmas. Woke up and we didn't know when those two leagues would come back, and by 7 p.m. that afternoon we knew the Premier League was coming back in about 3 weeks on June 17th, and the Serie A is coming back as well, basically that same week, with the Coppa Italia games, the semi-finals and the final that should be happening between the 13th and the 20th of June, and then the Serie A restarting on the 24th. So, incredible news. And I'm telling you that, some of those leagues, the Bundesliga, the Serie A, they're less covered and less well known around the world, but nonetheless, the Bundesliga is showing us how good football they play, and I'm sure the Serie A will do the same. And then of course the Premier League, the most famous football league in the world, everybody's waiting for it to come back, especially if Liverpool fans. I understand that the title race is probably closed already, so we're not gonna see any magic happening up there with Man City maybe making a run. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's going to be interesting to see how the other positions shape up, because of course you have Manchester United that want to get back to the Champions League. You have Chelsea that they're going to get kicked out of the Champions League most likely by Bayern when the European Cup returns, but they also want to stay in elite football as well. And Leicester trying to make another run to go back to the Champions League after their incredible year when they won the title. So there is a lot of storylines that are going to be interesting to cover over the next 2-3 months, and I can't wait. I mean, I've been waiting for so long to get good news about football. We finally got the Bundesliga a few weeks back. The Liga confirmed that they were coming back as well. They're coming back on the 11th of June, and more leagues are coming back. And just I can't remember last time I was so excited about a summer, because usually during summer you have international football, which I love, but it's not the same as having all these games and all like high caliber game. All of those games are going to be fun to watch, and every week there's going to be at least a couple games that deserve to be watched closely, especially, as I said, with the old Premier League table. Apart from the first place, the rest is all open. Even the relegation race is still open, with I think 3 teams within 4 points at the bottom. And the Serie A, it's been several years now since we had a race like this to win the title. Juventus, of course, is still first, but only 1 point ahead of Lazio that have been incredible this season. Inter is still there, quite close. They still have a game in hand, possibly 6 points behind Juve. So honestly, the race is on and it's open, and everything can happen. And also in Serie A, you have Atalanta that has impressed everyone in Europe after their incredible performance. They made it to the quarterfinals. They're waiting there to see who their opponents are going to be in this next matchup in the Champions League. And it's fun all around. And a summer of football is something that I've been dreaming of for so long. And I know the circumstances are not the best for it to be back, but I don't know. I feel like I'm much more excited than I would be normally because of the fact that we haven't had football for a while, and now we're going to get it all at the same time. And very likely, we're not even going to have a long break at the end of all this, because of course leagues have to come back sooner rather than later in the fall, considering that Euros are coming up in 2021. So this is gonna be an incredible ride, and I hope everybody will be here with me to go along and talk about the games, talk about the players. The transfer market is gonna be super weird this season, but I'm so excited to cover it all. And as I said, to everybody who's listening, I'll be here every week, 3 times a week. We'll be talking about every single game, every single aspect of the game, tactical analysis, player analysis. So I can't wait. I'm so excited, and I hope you all will enjoy with me. But now, after this incredibly happy rant I just went on, it's time to talk about some games. And I want to talk to you about the game just happened a few days ago on Tuesday, the Borussia Dortmund Bayern Munich game. So let's get into it. So on Monday I talked about this game, right? I talked about how I thought Borussia started the game as favorites because they had this deeper bench, this deeper team, and Bayern had certain positions on the pitch that I didn't think matched up very well with the Borussia Dortmund team. I was wrong in terms of the result, but I think you could see during the game that that was more of a result dictated by how Dortmund approached the game. So Dortmund went into the game trying to basically stay low with their team lines, make sure that they could face Bayern attacking possession and kind of hit them on the counter attack. And let me tell you, that's one of the worst things every team can ever do. And I can't stress this enough. I talked about a few days ago regarding the back three defense and how I thought it was extremely bad for any team to ever think about going to that scheme, because I don't think, and I never did, and this is just the more I watch these games, the more I'm convinced that I'm right about this. The back three defense doesn't work in faster leagues. It doesn't give you enough. Even defensively, it doesn't give you any edge, and offensively, it takes out from what you can do, what you can give during a given game. And if you use that tactic and also you add in basically a waiting game, a game where you just sit back, let the team attack you, and then try to hit them on the counter attack, that's always going to lead to defeat. Because first of all, if you walk on the pitch and your approach to the game is, you guys do what you want, we're going to be here, we're going to try to defend, not get any goals, and eventually attack you back, everything that does, that just gives the other team much higher confidence going into a game. Tells the other team, this guy is fearless, these guys don't, they don't want to take any risks, so we're going to have an open field here to go and get our goals. And that's exactly what happened in the first half against Bayern. So the teams, in my opinion, going into the game, they were extremely level in terms of form and in terms of players they had. The fullbacks that I talked about, how they were probably going to be very important during this game, but not a decisive factor. That's what happened, because Hakimi and Guerrero, they played okay, but they didn't play as well as they've had played before. On the other hand, Pavard was extremely careful on that side. He did very well in defense. He didn't give as much offensively, but then, out of the mix, you got to take Alphonso Davies, who played, in my opinion, the best in this game. I think he was man of the match, hands down. He was incredible. What he gives to the offense is absurd. If you also take into consideration that for the whole game, he basically took Haaland one-on-one several times, and he made Haaland look like a normal striker. Davies had at one point, if you go back and watch, there is a long ball through Haaland, and Davies is much far behind, and in no time he makes it back. He gets back that ground on Haaland and gets the ball back from the striker. So, best player in the game, hands down. But what's important here is that why was he the best player in the game, and why was he able to attack so much during such a game? That's because Borussia, with Hakimi on that side, they preferred to be conservative. They sat back, they waited, and of course they gave Bayern and his wingers and strikers. Another player who played an incredible game was Coman. For the same reason, when you give so much space to your opponent, to the opponent team, you're gonna be hurt by this, plays on the wide area, and that's always gonna happen. And in the second half, the Borussia came back and they managed to, change their mindset, attacked much more, and they showed that they could actually compete with Bayern. And in my opinion, they deserved the tie. There was even a pen for a handball by Boateng that wasn't given for some reason, and in the age of VAR. I don't understand how that's not a pen, but nonetheless, we're not here to talk about referee mistakes. But what I'm trying to say is that if you look and you watch back the game, you can clearly see how in the first half, Bayern's fullbacks and wingers were unstoppable because Dortmund wasn't putting any pressure on them. In the second half, if you take out Alphonso Davies, who had a great game, as I said, but overall he decreased his performance in the second half because Dortmund decided to move forward with their team instead of sitting back and wait. And they had several chances to score. They didn't, and that's another story. Football is football. You may try 20 times and never score, and the other team may shoot one time and they score. But nonetheless, you need to be able to get chances over chances, because the more chances you get, the higher your percentage of scoring a goal will be. That's just math. If you never try go forward, you're not going to get that goal regardless. And if you look at the stats, you can see clearly how the positioning of the players, like, Bayern players, you basically had Boateng and Alaba in the wrong part of the field for the majority of the game, and the rest of the players all in Borussia Dortmund part of the field. On the other hand, all the Borussia's players were always in their own side of the pitch. And that's just never going to work. That's never going to work, especially after, against a team like Bayern Munich. They will attack you, and mentally they are prepared and they know what that means. If you give them all that space, they know that that means you're scared of them, you're afraid. And to be honest, I praised Favre a lot over the course of this podcast, and I still think he's a great coach. But I think he proved again after the game in Paris, where they lost against PSG, even though they went into the game with a favorable result because they managed to win the first leg in Dortmund. They went into that game and they behaved exactly the same, and they lost. And even today, this was the game that could decide their season. Now they're too far behind. They're 7 points behind Bayern, and it's very unlikely, in my opinion. Even though Bayern's strength of schedule is much harder than Borussia Dortmund, I don't think Bayern are going to be losing many games, if any at all. And Favre went into this game knowing this, and he decided to play a conservative style of football for no reason, because even a draw wouldn't have done any good to Dortmund. They had to win, and they didn't play to win right away. I am sure if they did, I'm sure they could have scored one, especially because Haaland got injured, not properly injured, but he got subbed out of the game because his form is probably not, after this long stop. I don't expect every player to be able to play every 3 games, 100%. So he had to come off at some point in the second half. If you didn't, waste your first half, you have such a devastating player like Haaland, and you don't take advantage of him at all. And that, of course, came back to haunt them at the end of the second half, because you didn't have a striker, to finalize all the chances they had up front. So overall, I'm disappointed in Dortmund. I think Bayern played a great game, and even in the second half, they managed to control the game very well. They, changed their offensive style. They didn't attack as much, but they also knew how to still waiting for their team, but with a much higher level of play, meaning that even if the other team was coming at them, they will go get them much higher, farther up the pitch, which avoid situations of like defense being pressured, balls being lost, in front of the penalty area or anything like that. So overall, I think we had another proof that Favre maybe is the right coach to build up the players, but it's probably not the right coach for Dortmund if they want to win trophies in the near future. We'll see how that goes. I might be wrong, but this is an experienced guy that had, success in other places, but never really won much. So we'll see what they decide to do over the summer. I don't think they're gonna let him go. At the end of the day, Dortmund, it's not a team that, is gonna fire its coach because it didn't win titles. They're a team that wants to build, and he is the right guy to build. But I think if they ever want to make the next step, they're probably gonna have to change their coach. On the other hand, Bayern, as I said, a great performance, and I think this is a team that should really be taken into consideration as a favorite to win the Champions League when and if it comes back in August, because this is a team that plays very solid, doesn't have any extra stuff in there, any like they just go for the result. They know what they want, what they need to get through, and they will get that. There is no extra there. So I'm pretty confident Bayern is gonna be the favorite in my opinion once the Champions League comes back. And I don't think right now, especially considering they're gonna be playing, they started a month earlier than any other league, so their form will be much better coming Champions League time. Another game that I really want to talk about quickly is the Leverkusen-Wolfsburg game. Now, Wolfsburg is a solid team. They've been doing very well. They're up there competing for a Europa League spot. Solid team. Nothing spectacular in there. Not great players, but, an average solid team that can do well over the course of the season. But I did not think they could destroy Leverkusen like they did. And it's not even the result. A 4-1 victory is impressive. But what really shocked me the most was that Leverkusen, couldn't make a freaking play. This is a team that I was very high on going into this game, and I thought they could actually, by winning this game, they could, stay up with Dortmund and Bayern. And as I said, I don't think Bayern will lose many games, but it's definitely better to have more teams around there to put some pressures on the champions rather than no team at all. So I thought, they're going to go into this game and they're going to get a good result. They have the better players and they'll be able to stay, on this train that leads to the title. That didn't happen at all. Leverkusen could not make a play offensively or defensively. The 2 goals scored by Wolfsburg on corner kicks were exactly the same goal, exactly the same assessment, exactly the same goal scorer, and exactly the same mistake by the Leverkusen defense, which is something that in my opinion should tell you that they were not ready to be up there. This is a young team. The main star, Kai Havertz, is young. This team, if they manage to keep the players, they will improve. And they're going to get that mental jump, that will allow them to be competitive in the future. I don't know if it's feasible for them to keep the young stars. I've heard that Bailey, the Jamaican winger, has been closely linked to Manchester City over the past few weeks. So there could also be another guy leaving. Kai Havertz, I think he's going to stay another year, but I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up moving. But I think eventually he's going to stay there for at least another season. And then the other players, the Demir Bay is a good centre mid. It's not as young as the other ones, but it's pretty solid. So overall, this is not a bad team. It's just that mentally they're not there yet. And this loss, and not just, as I said, not just the result, but if you watch the game, it's depressing to see how a team with such high quality in key spots of the pitch was, destroyed by an average team. Their keeper, Bayer Leverkusen keeper, Radeshki, was the only reason why Leverkusen didn't lose 8-1. He was incredible. He made incredible saves. He's a very solid keeper, still quite young for a keeper, 28. I don't think he's going to go anywhere, so he's going to save them for more games, but they shouldn't rely on their keeper to keep them in games, especially against this competition. So, again, another disappointing result for me. After Dortmund lost, this loss by Leverkusen, I was honestly very high on both of these teams going to the week, and they disappointed both. We'll see if Leverkusen managed to get back on track. They're playing tonight against Freiburg. Freiburg, I talked about this team before. I think it's a very well organized and well trained team. I don't think they can do anything spectacular. We saw this past game against Frankfurt. They were winning 3-1 and they got in the last 10 minutes. Frankfurt managed to get back to a 3-3 draw with 2 goals. So it's a solid team. I think it's a middle table team. Leverkusen should not have any issues with them. But again, I don't know if it was the mental pressure of being so close to the top, or I don't know what else could have been. But they need to win this game because otherwise they're risking much more than just not getting to second or third spot. They're risking to miss out on Champions League football. Borussia Mönchengladbach has an easier schedule going forward, and they are tied in the table, but Borussia Mönchengladbach is above Leverkusen in terms of goals scored. So we'll see. I think Leverkusen has to get it right against these smaller teams, because otherwise it's going to be tough for them to make it back to the most important European competition there is. So I'm going to watch that Freiburg Leverkusen game. that's going to be my game of the week. We don't have time this week to talk about it too much because there's a lot, on the plate. But I suggest everybody watches that game because you could either see, Leverkusen getting back on track or falling again and risking to miss out on the Champions League, which will definitely say a lot about how, likely it's for them to keep their main players. Because with no Champions League, we know some of these players will not stay. And having to play, if you manage to play on Wednesdays, I think some of them could actually make it another season. And I don't think they could win trophies, but at least they could give their supporters something to cheer for. So we'll see how that goes, but definitely, watch that Freiburg-Leverkusen game tonight. That's my game of the week. Now, before we go on and close this week's last podcast, I want to talk to you about something that I've hinted a lot during the course of the last few episodes, but it's finally here, so let's get in with the storyline. This week's storyline is something that I've been, as I said, talking about quite a lot recently, and I think that's something that more teams are going towards, even in terms of when they look for players to buy from other teams or young talent to bring in, and that's positionless football. Now, this is a concept that in other sports has been introduced already. In the NBA, with the revolution of the game that was brought in by the Golden State Warriors, more and more teams are favoring the ability to shoot the ball, and so technical ability over having, for example, a center that can get you 20 rebounds a game, but they can't shoot the ball. And that's paying off there, and I think that's eventually exactly what's going to happen in football as well. I think the more we go on, the more we're going to see talented players, so players with a lot of ability to kick the ball, pass the ball, vision, being favored over players that would fit a certain position better. Just an example. Usually in a three-man midfield, you have your regista, which is the guy with the good feet, right? The guy that can pass the ball and see the spaces, see the lines. Then you have your mezzala the offensive mezzala, which is the guy that goes forward, gets in behind, and it's able to go in, get crosses. And then your third guy is usually a physical one that can get a lot, go and steal a lot of balls, tackle a lot, get the ball back to your team to start the attacking play again. Now, that's the canonical interpretation, but I'm not going to be surprised if in 3-4 years the main teams in Europe all are going to have 3 registas in the same line of play. Because this is the thing, you cannot teach good feet to anyone, right? A guy like a Matuidi or a guy like could be a Gennaro Gattuso, incredible player. Gattuso, incredible player, won World Cups, won Champions League, incredible player. But he didn't have the ability to basically save the play with his feet under pressure. He didn't have the same skills as Pirlo had in that midfield. And I think, as I said, the more we go on, the more we'll see a lot of players being moved to certain positions where they don't seem to fit because they have a lot of talent. And then once they've been moved there, they can be taught how to play in a certain position. Because running for 90 minutes is just about training. You don't have to have any physical predisposition to run for 90 minutes. And I mean, given that you're athletic, if you're playing football, no player should have any issues to be placed in a position where they get told, your role in this team is to get as many balls as possible back from the other team and give it to the guys with the good feet. But if you're already the guy with the good feet, that gives already an advantage to the team because you get the ball back and you don't have to make that extra pass. You don't have to go to your regista to be able to make a play because you already have everything you need in your feet. And this is what they're trying to do at Barcelona. Barcelona, they try to do this with Artur and De Jong. So basically, they have 3 midfielders with incredible class because Sergi Busquets is not the flashiest of guys, but this guy has an incredible ability to see the field in its entirety and to direct plays. So you have De Jong, Artur, and Busquets in front of defense that basically allows you to, doesn't matter where you get the ball back, to always have someone that can make a play on that side of the midfield. And the same goes for the fullback. We talked about this past Monday. how more and more teams tend to move their midfielders or wingers to the fullback position, because that's the same thing. A fullback has to be able to make plays from the wing, get the cross in, get the ball in the exact spot they have to be, but also being able to shoot the ball if it ends up being in front of goal. An old style fullback, they weren't as good. I mean, yes, you take Roberto Carlos from the early 2000s. Of course, he was great, but there were a lot of players in that position that didn't have the right technique, the right skills to be able to do what had to be done when the ball was in their feet. They were good at defending, but again, you can teach that. What you cannot teach is class. So I think the more we go on, the more we'll see class players being favored over anything else. And any sort of physical skills, especially in these positions of, critical for the team. Because a striker, you can put different types of striker, but eventually what you have to have up there is a guy that has the feel for the goal, another thing that you can't teach. So that's another story. But for positions like the midfield or the wing backs, those are positions where you need to have class because they're going to be focal for how you start playing your team from the back. And that's something that we've been seeing more and more going. There used to be a lot of long balls to the striker by the keeper. Now there's a lot of teams that play from the back through their center backs. And again, center backs is another example of how you can just move a center mid backwards. The guy has incredible ability to play the ball, so it allows you to avoid that extra step to go from the center back to the center mid. You can already start your playing from there, and I think it's showing that it's a winning idea, a winning type of football. Because look at the teams that have won Champions Leagues over the last few years. Liverpool. Fullbacks, they can make incredible plays with their feet. Centre backs, Van Dijk, he can play the ball, but even Joe Gomez, he can play the ball if he wants. They're all technically skilled players. Centre mid, Anderson is not, I wouldn't play it in my ideal midfield, but he has this skill of playing the ball the right time in the right place. Wijnaldum, same thing. Even Fabinho, he's more of a center defensive mid, but his feet work is definitely nothing less than what the other two have. And that tells you exactly why a coach like Jurgen Klopp is considered one of the best in the world, because he sees certain things and he knows that he can play these three guys at the same time, even if in theory they are very similar to each other. But then you have your Guardiola when he brought in the Xavi, Busquets and Iniesta midfield. Again, three guys that could all play the regista role, but played incredible together. And of course, why was that? Because the talent was so high. So it does not matter position. What matters is the talent. And the talent has to prevail over anything else. If you have a right back, that's better a right back than what your center mid is. But you can teach this guy to play right back, then you should do that. That's my point. I know it's kind of going against the flow of what people still think about today, with a certain guy being only available at that position, but that's not true. Trust me, we'll see this developing much more in the coming years. I think I don't want to be pretentious, but I think that's exactly where we're going towards. Just look at some of these players. Havertz, Zinchenko from Manchester City. That's one of my favorite players right now. So underrated, but so good at the same time. Pavard, it was a centre back with incredible feet. What did they do? They moved him to right back. Why? Because he can make plays there and they can teach him how to defend on the side rather than in the middle. Or Lucas Hernandez, he's a centre back. Atletico Madrid, he was playing left back. Why? Same reason. So, and I know I'm just mainly talking about Bundesliga players because we've been able to see them much more. But if you look at any of your leagues in the Serie A, Cuadrado is a right back now, but he started his career as a right wing. So another example. But even if you go to Spain, you have Daniel Vaz, who used to play centre mid for Celta Vigo, and now he plays right back for Valencia. So it's just more and more players that are moved to certain positions because they have the right quality and skills. And I think this is definitely the direction we're going towards. So it's going to be interesting for me to see how this ends up showing in other teams as well. And I think it's gonna be more fun to watch, because when you know that every single player can make a play, that makes the game so much more unpredictable and so much more fun to watch than it is today. So I'm all for this new change. And there it is, another episode coming to an end. Today was, as I said, felt like Christmas. All this news from England and Italy, and I cannot wait to see this summer unfold. And it's gonna be entertaining, that's for sure. I don't know what kind of football we'll see. I don't know how the games are gonna be in terms of physically and mentally for these players to go play these certain games, especially when they're gonna be so close within each other. But I know that I can't wait to have football back. So the more the merrier. I'm not gonna pretend like I wasn't waiting for this moment. I was, and I'm so happy it's finally here. So from next week onwards, we're gonna have a lot more to talk about as well. It's not gonna be just Bundesliga. It's gonna be Italy, Germany, Spain, England. All those leagues we're gonna be covering here, and I'm gonna be here every step of the way. And also, I hope you enjoy the storyline, because that's something I've been thinking about a lot, and I think everybody should pay attention and kind of figure out if your team has any of these players that are undervalued because their position is already covered by other players, but they may be moved to another position, because they have the quality to do so. So this is all for me. I'll be seeing you all on Monday for reviewing this weekend of games. As I said, there's gonna be Monday episodes, Wednesday episodes, Friday episodes. I'm gonna try and keep this schedule for the time being. I opened up an Instagram account as well, so if anybody who's listening wants to give it a follow, that's at sports_with_Frank. So just drop the follow if you like. As I said at the beginning, if you listen on Apple Podcasts, please leave a rate or review. 5-star would be incredible. And thank you so much for everyone who's supporting and who's listening. Again, I can't thank you enough. This was the Sports with Frank podcast. I was Francesco. Stay safe, and I'll talk to you soon.